I'm Cristian Partica, product manager for integration and extensions at Adobe Commerce. I recently entered this role, and I'm going to do a presentation about evolving the storefront for API in Adobe Commerce. What can you expect from this presentation? Well, a few things. We're going to talk about where is the API, where you can find it, how can you explore it, and how can you contribute to it, and what can you expect next from it. I know a lot of technologies are evolving, and GraphQL, it's actually becoming a centerpiece in commerce itself. So that's the purpose for today. A little bit about me. Yes, I do speak Romanian. I have been traveling around the world, and for some weird reason, I ended up in Magento. I actually studied in Romania, and then went in a few countries and did a few presentations in 3 languages. I also speak very well Spanish, so some of you might have seen me doing Spanish events. And yeah, that's a nutshell stuff about me. I was an engineer for a few years, and I contributed a lot to Magento too, in fact, alongside a very talented team here in Austin, Texas, where most of the code for Magento 2 was created along with contributions from community. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of thing here. Please scan this QR code. You can use the phone. I don't see a reason for why you should use your computer for this. I think phone is better. So scan this QR code, and you can go to this presentation right here. All right. See, 2 people join. And I'm just going to ask you, I want to know my audience. I want to know your interest, your level of experience, and so forth. So, all right, we got 4 people here. 5, 6, 7, 8. I want to hear a 10. Thank you. Okay. Seconds here. All right. So, question: what is your general experience with GraphQL? And this is not related to Magento, to Adobe Commerce. Just if you actually work with GraphQL. Right? GraphQL has been there for some years. I've done some presentations on it. Other people have done presentations on it. We introduced it actually in very late fall 2017 when we started this project. I was one of the original engineers that started it, along with other 2 colleagues of mine. And all right, so looks like there are people that never worked with GraphQL, and I promise I'm going to tailor my presentation today because of that. Okay, so we're going to proceed. Our experience with Adobe Commerce and GraphQL. So this is your experience with GraphQL in Adobe Commerce, right? Have you ever fired a query? Have you ever did a component with PWA or with other single-page application that leverages this technology? All right, getting some reactions there. I like it. All right, master of the universe. I like that. And this is a word cloud that I find this very interesting. What do you hope to learn from this presentation? As I said, the title is Evolving the Storefront API. This is a presentation about GraphQL as I see it from Adobe point of view, and as I see it from a tech lead, 3 years of experience in it, and a product manager for integration and extensions. You can add any word you want. Yeah. Yeah, basic understanding. That's principles. Yes, there's a spec out there. You can we can see how we actually follow that spec, what's in it, what we do, what they do, and how does it differ. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my presentation here. I'm going to talk about Project Monarch. Project Monarch is the Adobe Commerce initiative where we will create the world's best B2C, B2B shopping experience, which rich out-of-the-box features with API-first features. That means that you have a headless implementation. You can use only the API and bring your own single-page application, that's SPA. Or you can use our PWA Studio, and you feel free to use everything or just half of it, and create your solution. And it is composed out of different things. Project Monarch does contain the storefront, and then there's the developer experience and the designer part, and content and authoring integrates with AEM. And it's also a collection of infrastructure operations, CI/CD, caching. There's a lot of operational part of it. And yeah, many of you have seen this this slide with Venia, with this is the template for PWA Studio, which integrates with XD. So we're getting there. We're getting towards our vision with Project Monarch. Right. For all you developers out there, I would say that the future of web is let web equal PWA plus GraphQL. There might be some other stuff in that parenthesis, but this is a good formula that I found on the web, and I think it's very relevant. And for us, we can do extensibility and grow, customize our solution with outer process and in-process extensibility. So far, we have seen in-process extensibility, right? You can go into the code, you can create something in the API or some class and expose it to the API, and that's in-process. Outer process, you will just schema stitch, it will just add to the API, and it will create this unified schema that you expose to the SPA, to the single-page application, where you can consume it and have a really decoupled implementation where you have independent teams that work toward the same solution, but really they are on different stacks. All right, so you can really reverse engineer, hack your way into what are the queries that GraphQL really are consumed when you browse the Venia theme, right? And that's venia.magento.com. You can put your developer tools out there, and you can filter by GraphQL, filter by XHR, and you can really see what are the queries when you click things and how do they fetch the data, right? GraphQL is all about data fetching and effective data fetching. That is the purpose of the GraphQL itself. Yet, headless implementations like based on REST, they have been there for almost 20 years. That's not a new thing. But GraphQL, what really does well is doing effective data fetching. And it pairs well with the React or Vue, what have you, single page application. How can you actually explore more about GraphQL? Well, there's 3 tools. I will choose the last one, the Altair one. I hope you can see my mouse here when I'm hovering. And this is how the tool looks like. On the left, you have the query. It's for those of you who know GraphQL, this query sounds very familiar. For those of you that don't, then it's something very similar to JSON, but it is its own language. It's called a query language specific to GraphQL, and it looks like this, right? You can have parameters, you can have things that you're querying, and it's selected just like a SQL would have been, but for the web. And the response, it's actually JSON, right? And JavaScript is does very well integrate with JSON. That's why it is JSON. And when you want to know how to query things, you just go to queries and you can get a card, you can get a catalog, you can get a single product, you can search for things, right? You can have URL discoverability. And mutations are just the operations. Usually queries should work by GET, HTTP GET protocol, and mutations work by POST. And I'm going to talk about why that is. It's a little bit different than REST. Looking a little bit for some practical use cases, right? These are screenshots from Venia, from the PWA studio. This is a configure product. And how would you render, adding to cart, adding the mini cart here, seeing the shopping cart and checking out, right? Well, it turns out that, and these are the areas, I highlighted them so they can be very clear. For rendering the mini cart, you need less data, but for rendering this particular areas, you need much more data, right? And Graphql literally lets you select the data you want. You can construct your queries just like you do in SQL for grabbing the data you want, right? So in this case, I don't need to know the prices, the item names, or anything. I just need to count the number of items, which is very different from rendering just a list of products. And I believe there was a scroll here and there were 9 items. And yeah, this is a JSON array. And that's how the PW will read it and will parse it, and it will just feed their components and update their state. And for prices, you have here, for example, in this box right here, the grand total only, right? And if you don't really need like payment method or ship method or anything, you can just opt out of these fields. Okay, so always in GraphQL, by doing some operation, we do return the full state of the entity. In this case, the entity is the cart, meaning that either you done at first a cart query when you first paint your PWA to see, well, I had these items in the cart and they get actually cached on the client side. But then when you do add products to cart, we also return the cart, and it's your choice of selecting the items that you want, right? In this case, I was adding a customizable a product with options, and I was selecting which options they have, and you can see here how this query is done. And yes, this meeting will be recorded, so if you want to go later and see it, no problem there. Or you can select the payment method, right? The previous screen did not have a payment method. Here's how you do a mutation, the operation that selects it. This is a post request. And the difference between the previous and this one is that the card looks the same, but now we're querying actually the selected payment method, right? And you can always do that or not do that. And trust me, the performance of your query will be impacted, right? Because the more data you fetch, the more things that the server has to do to fetch that data, right? Sometimes you have to compute things. For example, available payment method might differ from the settings in Adobe Commerce that you have set in available countries, available methods for those countries respectively, or region even, or zip codes. So they are really contextual. Okay. And you can see here that this leverages quite the same cart, but you're really selective with your data, right? And what you want to avoid is doing multiple data fetching. I add something to the cart and then I do a cart query. You can do just one and update your state always, right? And that's the promise of GraphQL, having that data-rich interface. Other stuff that we worked on, and I want to highlight this a little bit because we have been working for quite a few years on this API, and there have been good things. There have been things that we learn from, and things that when we started, we didn't exactly know how this is going to look like, and within any project, within any product. In Agile, you plan for, hey, a few months ahead, and then it evolves, right? So in REST, for those that know the REST API, you have what you call the IDs. Well, it turns out that we did that in GraphQL as well, but it also turns out that GraphQL had its own plans for IDs. System that do client caching want an ID, like a real UUID. It cannot be integer, it has to be UID. Well, if you are to follow the pure spec for GraphQL, you cannot change the type of the ID from an integer to a UID. You can't. So, because that will be backward incompatible if you're using TypeScript, that will break probably your implementation. And if you run any backward compatibility check, it will actually flag it as a backward incompatible. So we pledge that from the moment we started the schema, all schema going further forever, it will be backward compatible. Meaning that how can we correct this matter? How can we actually have a UID? Well, we added something called UID, which is kind of a pseudo UID, but we had to deprecate the previous one, which if you're paying attention here, it is underscored in yellow. That means it's deprecated. And that means that going further, yes, you can still use it, and you can use it for a while until we remove it. But you should use the new UID, right? And not everything in GraphQL right now has these UIDs. Most of them were integrations around catalog. We did it in cart, but you can see here that there's parts like cart ID that should be renamed to cart UID, and these things actually exist right now, but you can use both. And going further, we'll deprecate and introduce new fields, and everything can be spotted on. Like your upgrade should be seamless, and we will support for numerous of versions, the old ones, but eventually you will have to catch up, right? And this is a tremendous effort because we have hundreds and hundreds of types that we have to update. So this is how it looks like in the schema. You can read it because GraphQL has this self-documentation where you can just browse and see what's being deprecated. And then you have the user errors. Well, this has been another learning that we did. We added user errors with messages that come translated from Magento itself, but they actually introduce a new concept in PWA Studio. They want to translate their own single page applications. So you really have no choice but doing error codification, which traditionally you don't have this in Magento, right? You can still go with server-side translating, but you will have codification for user errors. And also it does something else. It will let you know all the possible errors that can happen when you add something to the cart. Traditionally, this data doesn't exist, right? And it makes a very good experience for the developer who's actually programming the single page application, right? For now, we have product not found, not sellable, insufficient stock, and if something else happens, you have the undefined, right? If you choose to translate on your own, then you will use this codification, and this is what you call in GraphQL an enumeration. And if you know any programming language besides PHP, you have enumerations, right? I believe PHP 8 right now has enumerations as well, but I'm not sure. So you can really use that one, but you see this is underlined in red here. And why is that? Because set payment method on cart does not have that. it's not added yet. And we want to add this everywhere, right? Another lesson learned, and each time we do this, we want to do it in a non-disrupting way, and there's space for evolving this without breaking your single page application. That is the out of process extensibility, right? You just add, deprecate, and use the new things, and they will just be there for a while, but they will go away eventually, right? Where to find some more things about the queries or the mutations that we have in Adobe Commerce? You can go to the dev docs. I didn't put a QR code, but we're all familiar with the dev docs. You can just call Adobe Commerce dev docs GraphQL, and you can see here how we document it. We do a sample request, and there's a sample response that you can use, and you can go really and browse to all the queries we support and do the math, right? If there is something that you're looking for in Commerce that we don't support or we could support better, but so far I think you can have a pretty good single page application for B2C, right? There's little gaps there. Yes, we have issues as any product, and we're getting better at it. And there's an open issues list that you can contribute to, and I'm more than willing to collaborate with you on that. Okay. So this is the actual link to the dev docs. I did put here an actual QR code, so go explore it. There's more to it than just the list of queries and mutation. There's how do you use interfaces? What are the interfaces, and available payment methods, and all that stuff. There is another case here that's very interesting. This is what I call API flexibility. How do you render a configurable product? Well, you have basically two options here, right? You have color and size, and you have variants for them. And your purpose is to render how many swatches do you have for color, how many sizes do you have, and know that these are colors. These are actually some sizes with some labels. They're both swatches actually. And doing a complete selection will actually give you a final price, right? I can have different prices for S and green here rather than XS and green. And you can query all of them at once, and that works. Like if I compute, right, it's 4x4, there's 16 variations. But what happens if you have a brand that just has 30 colors, like jeans, and then they have numerous sizes, right? And then they have other stuff like the type of tailor, the type of cut, right? So for you have slim fit, you have relaxed, you have boot cut, and those are not 16 variations. You have to pull all of them at once. That becomes very hard. So we actually thought of that particular use case as well, and you can get selective because you only need to narrow down on one variant and not render all of them. You can use a query just to grab the options themselves, but when you click on each one, you populate and you narrow down on your selection. Finally, what will happen is just you will get populated with a variant, but only the variant that you want, not all of them, because in practice, you shouldn't fetch all of them if it takes 2 seconds and, I don't know, 1 kilobyte of data. So that's kind of the situation here. And there's multiple ways into leveraging the API this way. And we have other examples for this, right? Like single page mutation for adding to the cart versus specialized one for each type of product. Okay. And you can find all those things in the tests. For those of you who never run a web API test, and this is the way we test GraphQL, you can go to Dev, Test Suite, Magento, GraphQL. and you have here everything. We like to think that we actually fully covered what we have so far in GraphQL. Any contribution that you make has to be covered by a test. Right? So feel free to export this and run them. You can put a breakpoint right before the query is fired to see how it's being composed and what is the actual response. That is very beneficial because that's the way you actually learn. All right, so caching, that's another topic that I want to quickly speak about. We support caching in GraphQL the way we support full page caching for Luma. What does that mean? Well, various things. That you can treat your query in a single query, and you can bundle queries together, but then if you separate them, that will constitute a different query. White spaces that constitute a different query. And that's not a problem for a single page application because it has a fixed set of queries which ultimately would get cached, and they will repeat themselves always, and you will get the cache benefits, because if you have too many variations of your cache is not doing what it's supposed to do, right? You can have only a fixed set, a maximum number of cache variations. And that differs by being a guest, that differs by store, that differs by what customer group are you in. And we recently added in 2.4.4 a change in the way the cache key is actually computed. And we do support customer group right now without actually exposing the customer group itself. And it's through a hash. Check it out. It's actually a great feature that we saw customers having a great benefit from it. And that completes actually a production life site, making it very, very leverageable and production ready. All right, we have a Slack channel. Please enter the Slack channel. I'm there responding questions. My colleagues are there responding questions. It's a great way to actually collaborate with us. And there's interesting questions. We find out about issues, we file issues, we close issues, and so forth. And the last, I want to talk to you about what's upcoming. And I've been asked, not to copy this because we're agile and things can change. But as we understand right now, this is what it's about to happen. 4.2.4.4, there's things that we're putting in, like B2B features, attributes. We double down on the schema docs inside the actual browsable schema and dev docs. We're fixing a lot of quality and performance. We have new teams that are processing the public issues, by the way, and I'm really glad about that. We do support more order processing by async orders, and I think this has a tremendous impact for a large B2B customer, and it is a pain point that has been addressed, is now available in GraphQL as well. And past 2.4.4 really, we're looking at better integration with page builder, better integration with personalized content like customer segments. Yet we do support some form of dynamic blocks, but we're getting better at it. Stuff that we can do for platform and so forth. And check it out. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. So if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer. I know I have no time to, but.
We have time for a question or two. Thank you, Cristian, for the presentation. So as to questions, Daniel is asking, do we have something similar to vary cookies in GraphQL?
Yes, we actually don't use cookies, but we do use what we call cache header key, and that's in 2.4.4. So cache header key, you have to pass it in the header, and it functions just like the cookie, except the PWA has to manage it because we are cookieless. We don't want to use cookies, so you're simulating the same vary by doing this new header. I don't know if I answered your question, but yes, it's very similar, and it's documented. So
And another question is, can GraphQL queries be natively cached in Fastly?
Yes, absolutely. It worked with Fastly. I think that was our end goal and primary focus. So we've seen queries like catalog, CMS, all of that, which is 90-something% of your queries being cached and being delivered in under 10 milliseconds.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much, Cristian, for the presentation, and thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.